What's a conspiracy theory you pescatarianly believe in?
This one's kind of funny. Conspiracy theorists believe that Finland doesn't exist.
What?
And apparently, Russia and Japan made up the country Finland in 1918.
Okay.
The notion goes that the two nations created Finland so Japan could fish the sea that truly exists there without any environmental complications or repercussions. Then, the fish are caught and shipped via Trans-Siberian railways from Eastern European coastlines to Japan under the disguise of Nokia products.
What the fuck?
Surely it's got to exist.
Yeah, sure.
And people are saying you either live in Sweden or Russia. There's no in between. It's just sea.
Tucked away in the woods, over 500 human-like statues, some fitted with human teeth. This is one of Finland's most eerie attractions.
Did you know that this university student from Finland killed 6 people and injured over 160 others? If not, then you might want to hear this. On October 11, 2002, at the local Mirmanmien shopping mall in the town of Vantaa, Finland, over 2,000 people were present in the mall, including children. Everything was normal and nothing out of the ordinary until suddenly, a huge explosion was set off in the mall, killing 7 people, as well as injuring over 160 others, 10 of which included children. Police immediately jumped onto the scene wondering what set off this huge and tragic explosion, so they conducted an investigation by checking the mall's security footage. And who they saw in the footage was a 19-year-old university student named Petri Erkki Tapio-Jurt carrying an explosive device into the mall that contained ammonium nitrate and nitromethane with shotgun pellets weighing about 2 to 3 kilograms. It was later revealed through multiple interviews that Petri was a chemical engineering student who enjoyed making bombs as a hobby and brought one into the mall hoping to set one off with a timer. However, when passing through the mall, the bomb was set off accidentally, ultimately killing 7 people including himself. And since Petri also died in the explosion, no one will ever know his true motives.
Finland's most famous unsolved homicide is a terrifying story because in the summer of 1960, 4 teens went camping by Lake Bottom when at around 3 or 4 in the morning, they were attacked. The perpetrator blindly stabbed through the 10 in a frenzied display before using a blunt object, likely a rock, to finish them all off. 3 of the teens were killed, while Niels Gustafsson was the lucky sole survivor, though he was badly injured and didn't remember what had happened. The police investigation was shoddy from the start. Some believe it was a satanic ritual killing. Several persons of interest were looked into over the years, including Niels himself, who was put on trial and sentenced to life in 2005, only to be freed a year later after a successful appeal.
Heard of this sauna competition in Finland? You sit in a hot sauna as the temperature is slowly increased and you wait and see how long you can withstand this heat. Swimwear is the only clothing permitted and you're only allowed to wipe the boiling sweat off of your face, but not your body. Most people believed that this competition was pretty dangerous, but it wasn't until 2010 that that belief was proven to be true. When this poor man had to be carried out of the sauna where he collapsed and passed away. And while the other competitor may have survived the competition, he still had to spend several weeks in the hospital recovering from his burns. And I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I read that the second guy's skin was like bubbling off. But that makes sense because you're kind of in this like crock pot just cooking. If dehydration or heat stroke doesn't get you first, then that probably will. Just watch this video, but be forewarned. Thankfully, since then, the competition has been closed down, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone was still doing it somewhere.
What is the scariest thing you can think of happening while camping? This story comes straight from the heart of Appalachia. And if you love scary camping stories, this week's episode is probably the scariest camping story I've ever heard. So the story goes that in the Great Smoky Mountains, a scout leader was taking a bunch of Boy Scouts up into the mountains for the weekend. And they were deep in the mountains. The nearest road was supposedly 6 miles away. So that night, all of the campers go to sleep except for the scoutmaster. He wanted to stay up and read, but also he was getting this weird feeling that something was watching them. So he's laying awake in his hammock when all of a sudden he hears rustling. It's like too small to be a bear, but way bigger than a squirrel. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this man just walks out of the woods. It's the dead of night and he has no gear and no flashlight. And he just sits at the edge of their camp watching the tents. The scoutmaster's laying in his hammock trying to not move a muscle, and he ends up laying there for 3 hours. And all the while, he's thinking about how he was just reading about feral people living in the Smoky Mountains. Eventually, the guy gets up, stares at the camp for a few more minutes, and turns around and leaves. The scoutmaster makes everyone leave that next day, but he keeps getting the feeling that someone's watching him the whole rest of the weekend. I have a bunch of episodes that have different scary camping stories, so check them out.
Despite this case receiving heavy media attention, it has been years and we are still not close to finding out who did it. June 5th, 1960 was a normal summer day in Finland. 4 Finnish teens, 2 15-year-old girlfriends and their 18-year-old boyfriends decided to take a trip to Lake Bottom. Because my pronunciation would absolutely butcher their names, I'm going to leave them on screen in case you want to look anything up about them. Between 4 and 6 a.m., while the teens were sleeping in a singular tent together, they were attacked. These pictures of the tent from the crime scene show it just being absolutely torn apart. They were stabbed and cut through the actual canvas of the tent. The attacker not only attacked them with a knife, but also some sort of blunt object. The teens' wallets and their shoes were found a little bit away from the actual crime scene. Of the 4 teens, only 1 survived their attack. How creepy would it be to be camping not knowing that nearby somebody is lurking, waiting to kill you? Soon after police launched an investigation, they found out from some boys who were birdwatching around 6 a.m. on the morning of the murder that a blonde man was seen leaving the area. Eventually this sketch was made of the suspect, but police didn't really take this sketch that seriously. However, it did look quite similar to a man named Hans Assmann. Hans is originally from Germany and claims that he was a former SS officer and guard in Auschwitz. He also claims he was sent to the Eastern Front and was captured by Russian forces and became a KGB agent. There is no evidence to any of his claims. Additionally, Hans is the suspect in 2 other Finnish murders, including 2 other girls who were out camping and a teenage girl who was run over while on her bike. Additionally, he looks pretty similar to that weird sketch. Supposedly, sometime after the murders, he arrived at a Finnish hospital covered in bloody stains and was aggressive and anxious, also lying about his name. But police didn't bring him in or question him, and nothing came of this lead. In 2005, the survivor, Niels, was arrested and charged as the actual perpetrator. Even though he had his own injuries like a broken jaw, police claimed that these injuries were actually from the other friends trying to fight him off. However, there was no evidence, he was acquitted and awarded a ton of money for the pain and suffering caused by these accusations. A third suspect is a man named Valdemar who knew the area really well. He operated a kiosk on the site and was known to have a short temper. He also filled a well on his property shortly after the time of the murders. But again, there is no evidence it was this guy either. And to this day, Finland's largest mystery is unsolved.
Finnish mythology is a folklore of paganism. On his shoulder grew the aspen. On each temple grew the birch tree. On his mighty chin, the alder. From his beard grew the willow bushes. In Finland, those who have long since passed are said to have become one with Mother Earth. Plant life around them grows in their form, in their mirror image. Trees will start looking like skulls or faces, with moss for beards and knots for eyes. The dead that lie beneath have now become the foliage around you. In a beautiful and harmonic way, they become one with everything else. But it is said that when one rests for this long, you will be able to raise them from Tuonela, the land of the dead or the afterlife, also known as Manala. Shamans would summon the dead in challenging situations, such as the fight against evil, plagued monsters, or dark witches. With this one song, the dead would arise. My nature from thy hole arise, my Haltia from under a fallen tree, my helper from beneath a stone, my guide from out the moss. Come, dread-inspiring Kalma, come at a time of anguish dire, to give support, to safeguard me, to help me and strengthen me, for the work that must be done, for the hurt that must be known about. With that song, the dead would rise from the hands of Mother Earth, which is why
Aita lives in the woods of Finland and in the Arctic tundra, a serpentine creature that sometimes slithers, sometimes walks on two legs, a reptilian, almost skeletal head, antlers growing high out of its top. The scaled back is hunched, the tail long. Sometimes she is also described with dragon-like features, sometimes as a woman who suckles snakes and brings misfortune to anyone who meets her. As the granddaughter of Hisi, the master of the woods and spreader of disease, this female spirit is said to bring sickness and pestilence wherever she goes. The mere proximity to Aita brings disease to anyone unfortunate enough to cross her ways, and certain death to every creature that wishes her harm.